the heart of India's wealth, power, and faith. And in the year 1299, on the plains of Kili, its destiny would collide with that of the Mongol horde. Under the blazing Indian sun, war elephants advanced like living fortresses, their tusks wrapped in gold, their armor gleaming in the light. Cavalry charged through dust and chaos, lances flashing as cries of battle filled the air. On that scorched earth, two worlds met, the thunder of the steppes and the might of India. It was more than a battle. It was a message. Even the most feared empire on earth could be stopped. That day, for the first time, the Mongols learned to fear the south. For decades before that, they had swept across Eurasia like an unstoppable storm. Cities that had once been jewels of culture and knowledge, Merv, Nishapur, Herat, Urgench, were reduced to ash and bone. Chroniclers tell us that during Genghis Khan's campaign in Persia, nearly 6 million people perished, almost 1.5% of the world's population. The Mongols didn't simply conquer, they erased. They burned temples, destroyed libraries, and slaughtered entire cities until resistance itself became a myth. To fight them was death. To yield was despair. By the middle of the 13th century, the great Mongol Empire had splintered into 4 immense powers. The Great Khanate in Mongolia, the Ilkhanate in Persia, the Golden Horde over the Russian plains, and the Chagatai Khanate stretching into Central Asia, pressing ever closer to India's northern borders. Across the known world, kingdoms had fallen. The Song dynasty of China, once a beacon of civilization, was gone. Persia lay in ruin. Even a mighty caliphate of Baghdad had been crushed beneath Mongol hooves. And now, the eyes of the steppe turned south. India, at that time, was a tapestry of faiths, kingdoms, and ambitions. Hindu rajas ruled ancient lands. Buddhist monasteries whispered the last echoes of a fading world. And new Muslim dynasties rose through conquest and trade. Among them stood the Delhi Sultanate, young, ambitious, and proud. Born from the victories of the Ghurids and ruled by Mamluks, slave soldiers turned kings, it commanded the heart of northern India. But beneath the splendor of Delhi, cracks were forming. Rajput rebellions burned at the edges. Distant provinces like Bengal and Gujarat longed for independence. Yet Delhi itself stood unchallenged, a dazzling city of marble and gold, a heart that beat with trade, art, and devotion. Its bazaars overflowed with silks, spices, and gold that lured merchants from every corner of the known world. War horses came from Arabia, blades from Damascus, and jewels from Persia. To the Mongols, nomads who built no cities and lived their lives in motion, Delhi was the ultimate prize. Not merely a conquest, but a symbol. To take Delhi was to prove that no land was beyond their reach. And so began a confrontation that would test the limits of empire and faith alike. It was a war between the world's most fearsome invaders and a kingdom still discovering its own strength, a struggle that would shape the destiny of an entire subcontinent. From within this storm of ambition and survival rose one man, Ghiyas-ud-din Balban. He had been born into slavery, sold, and forgotten. But through courage, intellect, and ruthless resolve, he had climbed to the highest throne of India. As Sultan, Balban saw what others refused to see. The Mongols could not be reasoned with. Tribute would not satisfy them. Only strength would keep them at bay. Under his command, Delhi transformed from a glittering capital into a fortress of stone and steel. Along the vulnerable northwestern frontier, he ordered a chain of fortresses to rise, from Lahore to Multan, from Yuk to Samama, each one armed with deep moats, high towers, and soldiers ready to die before surrender. But Balban knew that walls alone were not enough. Armies, not architecture, would decide India's fate. He rebuilt his forces from the ground up, merging Indian courage with the strategy of the steppe. Exiled warriors and mercenaries from Central Asia flocked to his banner, veterans who had once fought under Mongol generals and now sought vengeance. They taught Delhi's soldiers the arts of mounted archery, hit-and-run warfare, and the deadly illusion of retreat. The Sultanate's army became something new, not just a shield but a blade. Among Balban's commanders were men whose names history nearly forgot. Alauddin Khan, the Turkic general who guarded the western frontier, and exiled Karakai officers who had seen their homelands burn. They fought not for gold, but for redemption. Under their guidance, Delhi's armies became disciplined, patient, and merciless. Soon, the northern frontier trembled with preparation. Fortresses rose, roads were cleared, messengers galloped between strongholds. Scouts rode deep into enemy lands. The plains between the Indus and the Yamuna became a wall of vigilance. But beyond that wall, across the wind-scorched steppes, the Mongol storm was gathering once more, faster, larger, more determined than before. And as the horizon darkened with the dust of 1,000 hooves, India braced for its greatest test. Because in that coming storm, the question was not whether Delhi would fall, but whether civilization itself could survive the fire of the Mongol horde. In the year 1285, the Mongols once again set their sights on India, launching a ferocious assault on the province of Punjab, a land both rich and scarred by war, serving as the Delhi Sultanate's first line of defense. The clash was brutal. Amidst the thunder of war elephants and the glint of steel, tragedy struck, one that would burn itself into the soul of an empire. Prince Muhammad, the cherished son of Sultan Ghiyas-ud-Din Balban, led the vanguard. Barely in his 20s, he carried the refinement of a scholar and the spirit of a warrior. When fear began to ripple through his ranks, he rode forward, sword raised high, calling his men to hold the line. His courage reignited their will to fight, but it also drew him straight into the jaws of death. In the chaos of battle, the prince fell, struck down as he led a counterattack that would save the army, but cost him his life. The death of Prince Muhammad was more than the loss of a son. It was the breaking of a nation's heart. Sultan Balban, known for his discipline and iron will, was said to have aged overnight. He never truly recovered. Yet from that grief rose a deeper truth. The Delhi Sultanate was no longer afraid. Against the world's most fearsome warriors, it had stood, fought, and endured. The Mongols had been stopped, not by fortresses or walls, but by human will. When Balban died in 1287, he left behind not just a throne, but a philosophy forged in hardship. His web of fortresses across the frontier, his reformed army that merged the ferocity of the steppe with Indian valor, and his doctrine of proactive defense became the backbone of Delhi's survival. The empire remained fragile, divided nobles, restless provinces, vulnerable borders. Yet beneath those cracks ran a current of steel, the determination to defend their homeland at any cost. But that fragile shield was about to be tested again. Beyond the Hindu Kush, a storm gathered once more, and this time it had a name: Dua Khan. Dua Khan, ruler of the Chagatai Khanate, was one of the most powerful heirs of Genghis Khan's legacy. His empire stretched across Central Asia, from the deserts to the mountains once ruled by the great Khan himself. To his north lay the Golden Horde, to his west, the Ilkhanate of Persia. Both were rivals, both dangerous. And to the south lay the one direction left to conquer, the jewel of India. To Dua, Delhi was more than just a city of riches. It was the bridge between east and west, the gateway to the world. Caravans from the Indus carried silk, spices, ivory, and gems, feeding the trade routes of 3 continents. To seize Delhi was to command the arteries of wealth and power. But more than riches, Dua sought glory, to etch his name beside his ancestors, to prove that the fire of conquest still burned in the blood of the Mongols. And so, his gaze turned south toward India. History tells us that throughout the 1290s, Dua launched raid after raid across the Indus, testing Delhi's defenses. Each time, the frontier bled. Each time, Delhi's generals, Alauddin Khan and Zafar Khan, pushed them back. The victories were hard-fought but decisive. Still, Dua learned from every defeat, adapting, refining, preparing. And then, in the winter of 1299, he struck again, harder than ever before. This time, Duis sent his son, Kutluf Khwaja, to lead the campaign, a commander famed across the steppes for his discipline, precision, and relentless will. His army was no mere raiding force. It was a legion forged from veterans of Transoxiana, elite cavalry honed in the deserts and mountains of Central Asia. For months, they advanced like a silent storm across Afghanistan and into northern India. Unlike previous invasions, there was no looting, no reckless destruction. Their march was measured, deliberate, the march of conquerors. They bypassed fortresses, ignored garrisons, and pressed onward. Their destination was clear, Delhi itself. When a Mongol vanguard reached the plains of Kili, just 10 kilometers from the capital, panic consumed the land. Village entiers d'Auvergnat. Merchants and peasants fled behind the city walls. Delhi, once a place of music and trade, fell silent beneath a sky heavy with dread. The crisis was sudden. Sultan Alauddin Khalji, young and untested, found himself facing the greatest threat in the Sultanate's history. The Mongols had moved too swiftly for warning. By the time word reached Delhi, the enemy was already across Punjab, closing in fast. The Sultan had less than 2 weeks to prepare. There was no time for diplomacy. Messengers rode through the night, summoning every soldier, every horse, every weapon the empire could muster. Alauddin established his camp at Siri, near the Yamuna River, a site both strategic and symbolic. From there, he could defend Delhi or meet the enemy in open battle. Inside the court, fear and debate raged. Many advisors urged negotiation, offer gold, offer peace, save the city. But Alauddin refused. If we bow today, he declared, there will be no crown left tomorrow. He understood the Mongols, and he understood his people. A sultan who seized power by the sword could not afford to show fear. One act of weakness could fracture the realm before a single arrow was loosed. And so, he chose battle. He ordered the city gates sealed, leaving only the Balban gate open, a single path of retreat should fate demand it. Guard it, he told his men, for only victory will open the rest. Then, with his army assembled, Alauddin Khalji rode out toward Kili, toward destiny. It was late autumn, 1299. The plains of Kili lay still beneath a fading sun, the air heavy with anticipation. On one side, the Mongol horde, a vast ocean of banners and steel. 50 to 60,000 horsemen, veterans of 100 wars, their armor gleaming like molten metal beneath the dying light. At their center rode Kutluf Khwaja, calm, focused, unyielding. On his flanks, Hylak and Tamar Buga, masters of swift and deadly maneuvers. And hidden behind the front lines, the cunning General Tari, waiting with 10,000 men for the perfect moment to strike. Before them stood the army of Delhi, 70,000 strong, with 700 war elephants armored in iron and steel. Their tusks glinted like spears. Their roars shook the ground. In the center of the line, Sultan Alauddin Khalji commanded in person, flanked by his loyal generals, Nusrat Khan on the left and Zafar Khan, the Lion of Delhi, on the right. 2 armies, 2 civilizations, and between them, the fate of India itself. The Sultan's banner moved forward, its silk snapping in the wind as Akat Khan led the vanguard and Ulu Khan guarded the rear. The battlefield stretched silent and still, a paradox of motionless tension before the storm. On one side stood the Mongols, undisputed masters of open warfare. On the other, an army fortified by faith and discipline. Alauddin Khalji, remembering the hard lessons of Balban and the cunning of the steppe, issued a single, unbending order. No one was to break formation, no pursuit, and no mercy for disobedience. He knew the Mongols' deadliest trick, the feigned retreat that had lured countless armies to destruction across Asia. This time, he would not fall for it. But courage has its own law, and sometimes it defies command. When the Mongol left wing under Hilak began to falter, Zafar Khan saw what looked like destiny itself opening before him. He urged his horse forward, calling out, "Delhi rides with me." His men followed with fierce loyalty. At first, their pursuit was measured and disciplined. Yet as the Mongols continued to flee, mocking and scattering dust across the plains, Zafar Khan pressed harder, chasing them nearly 50 kilometers beyond the main army's reach. That was when the trap was sprung. From both flanks, Tari's hidden divisions erupted from the tall grass, encircling the Delhi riders. Zafar Khan, realizing too late what had happened, refused to retreat. With barely 1,000 horsemen left, he formed his last line and vowed to die standing. Arrows fell like locusts, but the Delhi soldiers fought as men possessed. Chronicles tell that they cut down over 5,000 Mongol horsemen before being overwhelmed. In the midst of the slaughter, Kutluf Khwaja himself halted the attack, offering Zafar Khan honorable surrender, a chance to live as a guest of the Khanate. But the general spat at the offer. "Better a blade in the heart than a chain of gold," he said. Moments later, an arrow loosed by Hilak struck true. Zafar Khan fell beside his horse, his sword still locked in his stiffened hand. His death sent a tremor through the Delhi ranks, but not disorder. Back at Kili, Alauddin's forces held firm. The elephants stayed in line. The archers sent volleys of fire over the advancing scouts, and the cavalry guarded their flanks without breaking formation. The Sultan's composure became the army's anchor, and for the first time, the Mongols met an enemy unmoved by deception. Days turned into nights filled with tense skirmishes. Neither side dared to risk everything. The Mongols had bled too much, and the Delhi host, though weary, still stood like iron. On the third night, Kutluf Khwaja ordered a quiet withdrawal. His army slipped away under the cover of darkness, leaving behind their dead, their wounded, and the bitter taste of failure. India, it turned out, would not be the easy conquest they had imagined. The plains of Kili were left haunted, scattered with broken lances, shattered shields, and the lifeless bodies of men and horses. But Delhi still stood. For the first time in history, the Mongols had been turned back without fire, tribute, or victory. And Kutluf Khwaja carried home not gold, but the weight of defeat, thousands of his finest horsemen lost to a single miscalculation. Yet Dua Khan's ambitions did not die. In 1303, another horde of 120,000 cavalry thundered toward Delhi. But Alauddin Khalji was no longer merely a general. He had become a fortress builder. Around Delhi rose the citadel of Siri, walls of stone, trenches, and moats that made the city impregnable. Villages were cleared, bridges destroyed, and the countryside stripped bare to starve the invaders. When the Mongols arrived, they found not a city of merchants, but a fortress of ghosts. Behind the walls, the people of Delhi endured hunger and fear, yet they endured. After 2 months of siege, the Mongols withdrew, broken by famine and disease. Their empire of conquest had met a wall it could not shatter. 2 more invasions followed. In 1305, 50,000 Mongol horsemen crossed the frontier, only to be annihilated by Malik Nayak, whose cavalry turned pursuit into massacre. The next year, Dua Khan tried once more, but Alauddin's general Malik Kafur intercepted the enemy near the Ravi and Nagaur rivers. The Mongol army was surrounded, crushed, and driven north in ruin. Never again would their banners cast shadows over India. Had Delhi fallen in that first invasion, history would have turned dark beyond imagining. What befell Persia and Central Asia, cities burned, libraries turned to ash, cultures erased, would have become India's fate. The Qutb Minar, the palaces, the mosques of Marali, all might have been reduced to rubble. The royal libraries, filled with centuries of Persian, Arabic, and Sanskrit knowledge, might have burned like Baghdad's House of Wisdom, their ink blackening the rivers. India's scholars, merchants, and artisans could have perished or vanished into slavery. Its heart would have been torn out. But Delhi endured. The courage of Zafar Khan, The will of Alauddin Khalji and the discipline of soldiers who refused to yield had done more than save a city. They had preserved a civilization. The Battle of Kili became more than a military victory. It was a statement of endurance, a stand of faith and discipline against terror. In the years that followed, Alauddin's reign brought stability and reform. He expanded the empire, restructured the economy, strengthened defenses, and left behind monuments of stone that still echo his name. The Siri fortress became his legacy, a reminder carved in rock that strength and wisdom must walk together. And when history looks back on the Battle of Kili, it sees more than kings or soldiers. It sees the moment when Delhi stood alone against the storm and did not fall. A moment that proved courage can outlast empire, that walls can rise stronger than fear, and that even the mightiest conquerors can falter before those who refuse to kneel.